Hello and welcome to the DIF, the third session in today's first day of the new fortnight. My name is Miranda Schnittger. I'm the government lead here at Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Sessions we've already heard from today are around how circular economy can help to tackle climate change and also why flies might be the answer to the food crisis. But right now I'm really excited to be welcoming Petar all the way from Chile to talk to us about circular economy and the fourth industrial revolution and how these two things can combine in Latin America to drive prosperity forward. Before we get started, I just want to remind you that this is an interactive session, so please, if you have comments and thoughts as we go through the discussion, please put them in the comment box on the web page that you're watching this on, or use the hashtag ThinkDiff. So, without further ado, welcome Petar.
Hello, Miranda.
Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Chile, and I love the backdrop with Latin America perfectly in view there. Excellent. I haven't given your background yet to everyone who's watching, and it's always handy for me, actually, if you recap on it. So I thought we'd just start off by a little bit of context about how you got into circular economy back in Chile.
Sure. I'm a mechanical engineer from the Universidad Técnica Santa Maria in Chile with a master's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Madison, Wisconsin in the US, with several entrepreneurship, innovation courses in different universities around the world. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm part of this big family of entrepreneurs called Endeavor. I'm part of the directors board also in Chile. And I'm the CEO and co-founder of this family business that is called Neptuno Pumps, that is located in the north of Chile, right in the driest place on earth, in the Atacama Desert.
And what does Neptuno Pumps do?
We design and manufacture centrifugal pumps for industrial applications, for really heavy-duty applications with a lot of abrasive and corrosive fluid transportation in different industries.
Okay. So pumps, and actually in quite an extractive industry, where is the link there between working in that and circular economy?
Well, the world market of pumps, it's around $21 billion per year. And it's a really important technology and equipment for the civilization as we know it. I mean, everything is related to water, all the industries and all our cities and societies. And they are so important that sometimes they become invisible. And the thing is that the turnaround sometimes is so big that this linear model was really used to buy new pumps and throw away the old ones. So we saw a business opportunity in this huge market in order to create the first circular economy business model with industrial pumps.
Okay, great. So actually, as we go through this discussion more broadly about circular economy in Latin America today, some of this is also informed by your experience in the family business, working with pumps and remanufacturing of pumps in order
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And there is one other hat that you wear that we were discussing before this. You've moved slightly from just direct entrepreneurship to also working with inspiring an ecosystem of other entrepreneurs, which I believe is called the Center for Innovation for Circular Economy. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, this trip started 7 years ago with Neptuno Pumps. We started promoting the circular economy in Chile and in Latin America, but shortly we saw that our network was growing so big and so fast around the world that we needed to push the circular economy further. That's why 4 years ago, we founded the first Center of Innovation and Circular Economy in Chile and in Latin America, and we are really happy to be present right now, not only in Chile, but also in Peru, Colombia, Mexico, and Ecuador.
Okay, great. And just to give me an idea, this Center for Innovation, who is that really working with?
Right now, we're working with governments, policymakers, entrepreneurs, and organizations around Latin America.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll return to that later because it sounds like a lovely ecosystem that's involved with that. But the title of today's discussion was around how circular economy and the fourth industrial revolution can help drive prosperity in Latin America. There's some big words in there. And for context, I wanted to hear your thoughts on what really the fourth industrial revolution means. What does prosperity in Latin America mean? What does circular economy in Latin America mean? Give us your thoughts on what these big, heavy words actually mean.
Yeah. Well, before describing the fourth industrial revolution, we need to know that we had three previous industrial revolutions. So the first one was with steam or vapor powered, second, automatization, third, the internet, and right now, what we call the connection of atoms with bits, the connection of the physical world with the digital world is what we call the fourth industrial revolution. And there are some important things to say when we talk about or discuss about the fourth industrial revolution in Latin America, because our region particularly didn't had a really big role on the first three industrial revolutions. That's why we think that through the circular economy, Latin America can leapfrog to a fourth industrial revolution because all the technologies that the Industry 4.0 has created allow the creation of new circular business models, and the circular economy promotes the creation of these new technologies.
That's interesting. I would have thought that actually, well, I wasn't aware so much of the idea that perhaps Latin America hadn't participated as much in the other industrial revolutions that have happened. What are you thinking about when you're saying actually those previous revolutions haven't sort of haven't had the full take up in Latin America? Why do you say that?
In fact, we had a role, but in terms of providing the world and specifically the more developed countries with our resources, natural resources. For example, the place that I'm right now in the Atacama Desert had a huge role with salt pepper and allowed the industrialization of agriculture around the world. The same for copper, the same for other important materials. But we didn't play a role in terms of developing new technologies or in the creation of great industries in our region. So that's the opportunities we see right now, that with the democratization of the fourth industrial revolution, because when we see the lowering of the prices of technology, we can see that right now we can really industrialize the countries of Latin America, and at the same time creating a circular economy business model.
Okay, great. So I'm getting a sense actually that for you, what's exciting about the fourth industrial revolution is almost the localization of it in Latin America, that actually this can be something that you can really, you have a sense that it can lead to local innovation that actually Latin America can then capture and potentially export the example to other places. Is that right? Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that's right. And I think we can create technologies around the industries, the world-class industries we have in Latin America that are all related to the linear economy or through the production or exploitation of natural resources. I think that's the particularity of the circular economy and the fourth industrial revolution in Latin America, that we can take the advantage of these industries in order to start the transition towards a circular economy.
Okay, interesting. And the other word I wanted to unpack a little bit was prosperity, because I'm very conscious that I think it is something that we would all want to drive towards, but it can mean many things to many different people, and it can sometimes feel a bit too aspirational and perhaps not grounded. So if you were gonna root prosperity in something that you can see as an outcome, like what would prosperity look like in Latin America?
Well, for us, it fits with the triple benefits of the circular economy: creation of high quality jobs, economic growth, sustainable economic growth, and fighting against climate change. Because we need to remember that Latin America and most of our countries are always in the top 10 list of the most threatened places for the climate change. And the other thing is that, as I said before, because we didn't were part of the three first industrial revolutions, we need to create high quality jobs. And I think that through the fourth industrial revolution and the circular economy, we can create those. In fact, there's a super interesting report from the International Organization of Labor that has a special chapter on circular economy in our region, in Latin America, and it says that it can create up to 6 million new high quality jobs.
Do you have any examples of them? Because a challenge that sometimes comes our way is that if it's about the fourth industrial revolution, actually that's about jobs being automated, and this notion that there will be high quality jobs perhaps disappears, or perhaps there'll only be very few because it's for the very high skilled, but it's not going to provide a lot of job opportunities. Do you have examples that can counter that?
Sure, but first let me say that the transformation through or towards a fourth industrial revolution, it's so big because you need to transfer the energy matrix, the communication matrix, and the transportation matrix. So when people are afraid of the job destruction or potential destruction of jobs in Industry 4.0, I think there's no need to worry about that, because we have some examples. For example, in the mining industry, the automatization of all the mineral transportation in the mining industry. I know the case, for example, in one mine site that it provides 2,000 jobs. And right now they think that through automatization, all these 2,000 jobs will be destroyed. But in fact, 3,000 will be created in terms of not only operation, but also in the need of support, creation of new technologies. And that's one really small example of that. Not only we won't destroy jobs here, but we will need more, and we will need to make new workers more skilled on these new jobs and industries.
Okay, great. So there's definitely something around the fourth industrial revolution enabling new ways of working in terms of, for example, automation, a different way in which machinery can work. Other examples that I've seen are also how it can help capture data so that you can track materials more easily, and then that opens up alternative business model opportunities, for example, through sharing or through offering things as a service.
Yeah. For example, in our business, the pump or the fluid transportation business, I mean, what we are doing right now is that our customers, they don't want to own the pumps, because they don't know what to do when the life cycle ends. So right now, what we're moving towards is to product as service. So I won't sell the pump. I want to sell the cubic meters per second that I'm selling to our customers.
Okay.
And that will need more skillful workers and technicians.
Okay. Well, and zooming out again a little bit from this, what are the triggers in Latin? I know you've mentioned the opportunity that the fourth industrial revolution poses for Latin America. You've also mentioned that actually the pressures of climate change is a reason why perhaps people are looking at a new model. Are there other things that are particular about Latin America, which has currently got an economy that's driven a lot by natural resource extraction? Are there other triggers, therefore, about shifting it to a circular economy that are local to the region?
Yeah, for example, in our region, we generate 160 million tons of solid waste per year. That's 1.1 kilograms per day. And the sad thing is that only 3% of all this waste is recycled or reused. So we have a huge opportunity in the creation of this waste that we know that in the circular economy, waste are resources. And when we compare these numbers to Europe, for example, I studied some data, and the creation or the generation of waste is not that different in Latin America than in Europe. But when you compare the recycling rate, as I said, like here is 3%. Most of the most advanced countries in Latin America, they are up to 10%, and Europe is 60%, 40%, 50%. So the huge opportunity we have there in order to create or generate economic growth, in order to create new jobs that can create wealth from this waste, and the opportunity to generate new business or new circular business models is huge in our region.
You were mentioning that, for example, in your own family business around the pumps, the model is around remanufacturing. Remanufacturing and repairing, is that an industry that's still very much alive in Latin America, or would that sort of need a bit of rekindling?
I think the definition for the last 100 years in Latin America is repairing and remanufacturing. I think it's part of our DNA, and that's why the circular economy makes so much sense in our region. And right now, I think a lot of business companies or family-owned businesses are really comfortable with the concept of the circular economy because it's so natural for us, and it's like a rebirth of these business models that for the last 60 years, 50 years were considered like bad quality ones, or the businesses that nobody wanted to be involved with. But right now, all these entrepreneurs and these family-owned businesses see a huge opportunity of creating a new story through what we've been doing for the last, as I said, 100 years.
And do you see a side of this which is about, or do you encounter challenges around shifting that perception? Because you were just saying like the repair, those people in the repair model sometimes felt like they were offering a less good product, whereas in fact now this narrative is also showing that actually these products can be just as good, but you still need to bring other people on board. Do you think in Latin America there's an acceptance of using repaired or remanufactured goods?
That's a great point, because you have so many different cultures in Latin America that you have countries like Chile that recycling, remanufacturing, repairing it's not a big issue. But I've encountered some other countries that when you speak about recycling, or that this material is reused, or this product has a second life, they automatically think about as a bad quality product. So that's why science, engineering processes are really important in order to create this new story, and in order to create this culture change we need in Latin America. Because the circular economy for us is not just a technological change; it's a cultural transformation also.
Okay. Great. We've had a question in from Scarlett online, I believe, asking about what the major differences are between how the circular economy will play out in Latin America compared to Europe. It's a very big question, but I wondered if you had a sense of what might make it particular in Latin America.
Yeah, as during the 70s and the 80s, Latin America suffered from a huge deindustrialization process, and that really affected us, the innovation capability, the manufacturing capability. But I think that's also an opportunity right now when you are faced with with Industry 4.0, that you can get technology that is so cheap right now. For example, 3D printing or machining or new foundry, and that's why in our Center of Innovation and Circular Economy we talk about leapfrogging in Latin America, because as we state always, is like the case of Europe right now is that you're moving from the linear economy to the recycling economy to the circular economy, and you have really clear objectives and paths. Right now in Latin America, we're in the linear economy, and we know what we can do in the recycling economy, because we have all the great examples from Europe, and we have all the great data. But the huge opportunity right now is to leapfrog directly from the linear economy to the circular economy. But we need to industrialize again, but in a 4.0 way, our region. And that's why we think through this we can create economic growth, quality jobs, and fight climate change.
And so leapfrogging, which is a great word, I think it conjures up a brilliant vision of, jumping over one in-between step, one in-between hurdle. I personally sometimes wonder whether when we say that word, we're being lazy and we're perhaps missing out on the complexity of achieving change, or perhaps it's only a very common example that's referred to is instead of a country moving to landlines and then to mobile phones, perhaps they move to mobile phones directly. But can we really achieve that in lots of other examples? What's your sense in Latin America? Are we being lazy, or is this a real thing that we can achieve?
I think for Latin America, it's a real thing. I mean, we are following the great examples and lessons learned from Europe. And for us, maybe it's a little bit easier because we have a clear path. You guys in Europe are the ones that are really pushing the circular economy, and maybe for Europe, it's a bit more difficult. But what we can do here is to see what you've done there and to be more flexible in order to apply it in Latin America.
Yeah, I challenge that and say actually it's probably a level playing field in some ways, because if Europe is in a place where it's looking to move beyond recycling into the whole reuse and repair and remanufacturing space, and actually if Latin America is going to leapfrog to that as well, the importance of sessions like this, where we can try and draw out certain stories, certain specifics about how different regions think. Actually, the two sides, the two experiences can really support each other. And I think in Latin America, it's so interesting, given the strength of the natural resource sectors, to understand what's possible there.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that you talk about the natural resources, I think also the story here has changed or has switched in Latin America, because right now we understand that some natural resources, for example, lithium and copper, are really important in order to fight climate change. So that wasn't part of the story. I would say 5 years ago. So that opens a huge gate in order to move towards a more green mining, or in order to create a circular mining. That for some people it's a really difficult idea to understand, but for Latin America it's a huge opportunity.
Okay, great. All right, well, I'm just going to give us a very short break in order to hear a little bit about some of the upcoming sessions that are still to come in the next 2 weeks of the DIF.
Thank you for joining this great session. We have a lot more sessions coming up this week at the DIF. If you're interested in fashion and how to make the fashion industry circular, tune into these sessions. On Tuesday at 11 a.m, we'll discuss what will the clothes of the future be made of, and then at 6 p.m, we'll talk about what would a circular fashion economy look like in Los Angeles. On Wednesday at 4 p.m, we'll discuss a new consumption model, the rise of fashion rental and re-commerce. And last but not least, at 3 p.m. on Thursday, we will learn about a new story about the future of fashion. We really hope to see you there, and as always, don't forget to use the hashtag ThinkDiff on Twitter to comment and ask any questions. You can catch up on anything you've missed and find the full schedule at thinkdiff.co or on the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's YouTube channel.
Great. Well, do also continue to message in your thoughts and questions as we continue the session. We'll probably return to that point about natural resource and mining opportunities in a moment, but we've had a question in from Freya about the power dynamics and who's really leading it. Is it national governments or is it social entrepreneurs? I thought you might have some interesting reflections on this based on your work through the Center of Innovation.
Yeah, what we've seen in Latin America, and particularly in Chile, is that this movement absolutely started with the entrepreneurs. I mean, entrepreneurs were the driver of this process, absolutely. I've seen the same thing in Mexico with great entrepreneurs, also in Colombia, Peru. And after this, all the governments start supporting and pushing. In the case of Chile, it was great. We have a corporation that supports entrepreneurs, that established the circular economy as the backbone of the development strategy in Chile. They also the same thing we're seeing in Mexico as a country, also in the city of Mexico, which is a country in itself. I mean, it's 22 million people. Chile is 17 million people. So I'm really happy to see that happening also in Mexico. And Colombia, that also has a strategy for the circular economy. So the first step was entrepreneurs, the super powerful ecosystem of entrepreneurs we have in Latin America, and then government and organizations.
Can you tell me a little bit more? I mean, my role here is about governments and how they can enable the circular economy. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experiences in Chile or the city of Mexico, which you rightly point out is so many millions of people. It's bigger than London, where I'm from. It's almost a country in its own right. So what are some of the experiences you've had with working with government?
What I've noticed is that success cases are the trigger for this change in mindset that governments have.
You said
Absolutely.
Success cases?
I mean, yeah, all the processes I've seen around Latin America started with one really great success case.
Okay.
And that's why what you're doing here through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation or DIF is so important, because we need to show the world, especially Latin America, that there are entrepreneurs, that most of them, they don't know that they are already circular. But when they see success cases, they start to wonder and to rethink their processes. So
how do they find out about the success cases? Is that the role of the center? Do you know through your network some good examples and then take that to public policymakers, or how does it happen?
Well, that was one of the main motivations, because our own case, Neptuno Pumps, we were really open to show what we were doing. And we were creating content, we were writing articles, creating videos and playing around in Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. But we saw that this wasn't really usual for other entrepreneurs. So that's why we created the Center of Innovation and Circular Economy, to promote the business model in Latin America, and to show the entrepreneurs that they in this new economy, attention economy, where eyes are looking all around the world, it's super important to create content and to show what they are doing.
And we've had a great question in from Nala about what some of the technologies that are particularly impactful in Latin America right now. Do you have some examples from the entrepreneurs you've worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question, because that's exactly what we say when we state that circular economy and Industry 4.0 are two faces of the same coin, because it's not just a transformation in the manufacturing capability. I mean, foundry, metal casting, plastic recycling, machining, etc. But it's also an opportunity for Latin America and entrepreneurs to create new or use or incorporate new technologies as machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, data analytics. And the mixture of these two technologies are the great examples we have in Latin America. For example, we have a lot of entrepreneurs that are manufacturing and remanufacturing their products, also moving towards a products as service business model. But a lot of entrepreneurs are IT, particularly in Chile and Colombia, Mexico.
Okay. And how do the policymakers respond to some of these new technologies, particularly around data, which for policymakers, I think all around the world, is both a huge opportunity but also quite a challenge in terms of ownership of data and how to manage this whole new asset class?
I think organizations and governments are super excited with this. They saw a big opportunity, and they are really grasping all this. I mean, I haven't seen anything but support. And as you mentioned, in terms of what is happening right now in Chile and in Mexico, which is a superpower in Latin America, it's amazing. I mean, in Mexico, you don't only have the Senate of the Republic pushing a circular economy policy, but also the city of Mexico, as we said before, that is huge, is also promoting the transitions towards a circular economy. So when the circular economy lands in a country as important for Latin America as Mexico, I think we will have an explosion of the movement in our region.
That's great, and it's always good to hear of actual examples. So if Mexico is developing a sort of policy strategy towards it, something that we're aware of here at the Foundation is Chile's recent development of a plastics pact, which we've been involved with.
Yes.
I know Colombia is also looking at a strategy Uruguay, I think, also has a center which is focused on small businesses, I believe. And you've worked specifically with the Chilean government on setting up a center of circular economy specific to Chile, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, our case and also another entrepreneurs in Chile, where we made such a big impact that the government immediately started to see the importance of the circular economy. It started with two really specific projects that supported entrepreneurs. At the beginning, because I was part of that, we didn't know how many entrepreneurs we would find out in Chile. The first call, 150 entrepreneurs showed their projects. The second one was the same. And it was great because in Chile, the government supported with $100,000. So that was great for entrepreneurs. And it kept growing and growing. And at the end, the government said, okay, so it's so important, the circular economy. Why don't we create the first center of circular economy with public and private support in Chile, which would be the first one in Latin America? We were part of that. I mean, we ran for the project. We were really lucky, and we made a great project, and we won that. And we finally gathered $22 million. I mean, for a country as Chile, that's, and not even for Chile, for the entire world, that's huge. I mean, when you look at the news of BlackRock that started this first circular economy fund, it was $2 million. We could get companies and government to gather $22 million in Chile. So I think it will be great, not only for Chile, but also for Latin America.
That's a really good point about the financing, because the fund from BlackRock is one thing. This center, which is public and private financing coming together, as I understand it, the money is also to go into sort of research and development. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, that's our focus of this center. It will be absolutely business driven. Okay. We want to invest all this money in research and development, creation of new companies, creation of high quality jobs, and invite companies or circular economy companies to establish here in the north of Chile and in Chile in order to promote the circular business model.
And does the fact that there's public-private funding behind this, does that help, or does that in any way link it back to sort of public policy challenges, making sure that some of the solutions are both profitable business opportunities, but actually also tackling some social issues? Is that part of it?
Absolutely. For us, I think one of the originalities of the circular economy or this center is that you can transform territories. So I think that is one of the most important objectives we have right now, and naturally we will work with government. But let me say one thing, that maybe when we talk about public, we think that the money that the government is putting, it comes from the government, but in fact the $10 million that come from the government, they are coming from the lithium industry that is Chilean. So it's money from private companies that goes through the government, but it's from the lithium industry.
Okay, so there's a sort of flow going on from,
that's right,
from a natural resource company that is also then going back into circular
Absolutely.
Economy innovations that may or may not be linked to the lithium industry. There's no requirement for it to be linked.
Yeah, I mean, our idea is that it must be linked, because lithium is so important for electric mobility, for batteries, and for the creation of new green technologies. So, and I don't know if you've seen, there are a lot of circular economy business models right now with lithium batteries.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. I didn't realize that bit. And I think that's fundamentally important, because we are going to need to shift to a lot of the new energies that we're shifting to will involve battery power. But that also is a material within the economy for which we need to find a circular solution as well.
Absolutely.
I have a question specifically around the role. What does this mean for local community development? Can local communities be included in this, or actually are they at risk of being excluded from this circular economy, fourth industrial revolution transformation?
I think the circular economy is the only way to include communities. Right now, and through the deindustrialization we had in Latin America and in Chile, communities were excluded from economic development because all the high quality jobs and all the high tech products were designed, manufactured, and repaired overseas. So the jobs that people had in places like my region were not that high quality jobs. And through a circular economy, we can bring back local industries through a circular economy business model that can create these jobs incorporating new technologies.
Okay, great. That leads me to a question that I think is quite important to ask, because sometimes our conversations, because it's a circular economy enthusiast talking to another one, it can sound like all of this is just happening and it's all fine and it's a large part of the economy. But where would you say that we are on this transition journey? Are we well into it, or are we right at the start?
I think we're in the start. In Latin America, we are in the start. I mean, when we created the Center of Innovation and Circular Economy, we wanted to go directly to create new entrepreneurs and to create new business models. But we faced that a lot of people didn't understand what circular economy was at the beginning. So a lot of confusion with recycling, also not having an industrial capacity installed made a little bit more difficult for people to understand that this was a process, that this required technologies to create circular economy business models. But I'm an optimist, and I think that's a real advantage for us. Yeah.
It sounds also like, from everything that you've said, you're an optimist. It involves all these technologies. It also involves that absorbing of the idea and being able to sort of reformulate questions, so that you're not just thinking about what can I sell to someone, but also, well, like, what do they really need and how can I keep those materials in use? So it's that mind shift that is also part of this.
Yeah, and I'm really optimist also with new generations. I think for them it's more easy to understand that you don't need to own some products, that you just can use them as long as you need. So we are in a paradigm shift, but I think it's a great opportunity for all of us.
Well, we are coming towards the end of the session. Thinking about circular economy in Latin America, as we have been, what are the 2 or 3 nuggets or insights that you'd really want everyone who's tuned in to our session today to take away?
First, that, and we repeat it over and over, that we cannot talk about circular economy without mentioning the 4th Industrial Revolution. I mean, they are 2 faces of the same coin. You cannot create circular business models without the technology, and the circular economy allows engineers and entrepreneurs to create and develop these technologies that will allow us to move towards a zero carbon 4th Industrial Revolution. The second nugget is that Latin America has a great opportunity to leapfrog directly from a linear economy to a circular economy, just passing by through the recycling economy and learning from all the great stuff Europe and developed countries have done. And maybe the third nugget is that the role of government is super important in Latin America, also in the rest of the world, but particularly in Latin America, because it requires a cultural shift, and it requires motivation for entrepreneurs to show what they are doing. They need to lose the fear. They need to understand that you need to show what you're doing. And when the government starts talking about circular economy, it's much, much easier for all entrepreneurs and companies over here.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I'm really delighted to have heard a little bit about the other side of the world, a part of the world that I've rarely gone to. I think we mainly focused on Hispanic-speaking Latin America as well. We should have said that. We didn't talk too much about examples from Brazil, but I'm sure we can do that in another session.
Absolutely.
Excuse us for having the lights turn off if you noticed that. That was us leapfrogging from linear to circular at that precise moment. Peter, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope we managed to answer some of your questions along the way. And do please tune in for other DIF sessions. They are available on Catch Up, but there's more to come tomorrow and for the rest of the week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.